What comes to your mind when you hear the word wizard? Is it Oz, the great and powerful who hide behind the curtain? Gandalf of Tolkien's Legendarium? Merlin of Arthurian legend? Or Harry Potter, the boy wizard who bravely fought the Dark Lord? What about a wizard who is not only expert in the magical arts, but also a scientist, mathematician, translator, philosopher, teacher, doctor of theology, advisor of kings and queens, even to the Holy Roman Emperor? No, I'm not talking about John Dee of Elizabethan court, who came much later, but Scotland's very own wizard of the north, Michael Scott. Born in the late 12th century, Michael was educated in Oxford, Paris, and Bologna, translated many Arabic books, including several Aristotle's work into Latin. He was perhaps the most intelligent man in his time, but we're not here to talk about his impressive credential, but many strange tales of Michael Scott. One tale of Michael's great power tells of a time when French pirates were harassing and raiding Scottish ships. King Alexander III of Scotland sent Michael Scott with a message to the King of France to demand the cease of such attack. Legend told that Michael opened his Book of Might, a necromantic book of spells, conjure a mighty beast, the shape of a dark horse that evening. His magical ride moves like a wind, and by sunrise the next morning they were in Paris. And Michael boldly entered the king's palace and stated his business. The French king ignored Michael and told his guard to escort Michael from the palace. "Wait a moment, your majesty," said Michael, "till you have seen my horse stump 3 times. If he continue to ignore my request, all Paris will fall on the 3rd hoof stamp." The king waved to dismiss Michael, but the horse then stamped its hoof. All of a sudden, every bell around Paris began to ring, but the king was not impressed, nor intimidated by this conjuring trick. The horse stamped the 2nd time. 3 towers in the palace collapsed into rubble, just as the horse was about to stamp once more. Fear of the damage it might done to his city, the king shouted hastily for it to stop, and agreed to do whatever the King of Scotland wanted. In the previous episode, we talked about the magical Eildon Hills, where meeting of Thomas the Rhymer and the Elven Queen took place. But the legend also told us it was in fact Michael who split the hill into the triple Eildon we have known today. It is said that the wizard had one very active little daemon who had to be put to work to keep him from destructive mischief. First, Michael commanded him to put a barrier across the River Tweed at Kelso, thinking to keep him quiet for at least a week. But the little daemon had it done in a single night, and Michael set him to divide Eildon Hill into 3. This again was done in one night. In despair, Michael setting the daemon the impossible job of weaving a robe out of sea sand, and hoping it would keep him busy as the sand will not hold together. Some say if you go down to the shore on the south-east coast of Scotland on a dark and stormy night, you can still hear what sounds like the daemon moaning and groaning over his impossible task. You can see a barrier across the River Tweed at Kelso today, and the Eildon Hill is certainly divided into 3. Michael also had his dealing with witches. In Cumbria, England, and there stood the second largest stone circle in the country, named after Long Meg and her daughters, believed to be the Cavan witches who turned into stone by Michael for profaning the Sabbath as they danced wildly on the moor. Perhaps it's not a surprise, as common legends throughout Britain with variation told the stone circles had been petrified sinners, wedding parties, and giants. Other tales of Michael say that he once lured the plague with his spells and locked it in a secret vault beneath Glenluce Castle. With his exceptional knowledge in astrology and astronomy, Michael predicted many outcomes of wars and events was serving the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II. He even predicted the Emperor's death by saying that it would take place by gates of iron in a town named after the goddess Flora. Thinking that might mean Florence, and Frederick, not surprisingly, never went near the city of Florence again. However, in early December year 1250, Frederick had fallen ill in a town named Fiorentino. He was taken to the local castle, lay in bed, and by the walls stood the iron brackets on which the gates of tower had been held. He died soon afterwards, on 19th of December the same year. It is said that Michael also predicted his own death, and that he would be killed by a stone and fallen on his head. And for that reason, Michael wore a steel helmet at all times. However, one day he took off the helmet as he attended Mass in Melrose Abbey. Sure enough, a stone fell from church ceiling, striking him on the head, fatally wounded him. He rapidly descended into a sickness which killed him shortly afterwards. Known especially in Sir Walter Scott's popular work, The Lay of the Last Minstrel, Michael even appears in Dante's Inferno. Later, in the same century, in Giovanni Boccaccio, in his famous work, The Decameron, and Michael down as a great master of necromancy. His name also seen in many modern fiction novels, poems, and plays, and most recently, the popular BBC TV series Shoebox 2. Michael Scott was indeed a remarkable man. One might ask how a shining beacon in the esoteric field, a well-read and distinguished scholar in many sectors, merely remember as a wizard of strange tales. Perhaps jealousy and politics and religious infighting play a large role here. After all, many figures in history we have known of today are either carved so finely with agendas, or portrayed in a bad light with negative propagandas, some reduced to the shadow of their former self, hidden in dark corner of a library, never to be seen or heard again.